I'm not a commercial artist. I don't want to be a commercial artist. I don't want to sound like one, and nor do I want to look like one. And interestingly enough, through my journey, I've been able to touch so many people and inspire so many people, especially not only, let's take the LGBTQ equation out of everything. I'm going on 54 years old, and I've got the number one independent country song in Canada this week.
From NCPR, welcome to Northwards. People, ideas, and conversations from and about Northern New York, Vermont, and beyond. I'm Mitch Teich.
Support for the Northwards podcast comes from the J.C. Steiniger and M.E. McDonald Charitable Fund at Adirondack Foundation in support of the Adirondack Foundation, building stronger Adirondack communities.
All right, I hope you don't mind if I get heavy for a second. This is the holiday season, and I hope I, and we all, have the chance to make some nice memories this year and either honor some long-standing traditions or maybe make some new ones. But this is also the time of year when a lot of us think back on some time in our past. I'm not talking about the ghosts of Christmases past, just that time that's frozen in our mind, when our relatives or our friends were the people we thought them to be. Maybe your grandparents are there, or your parents, or maybe it's your kids at their ideal ages. Just those fleeting images you remember fondly or wistfully that you wish you could bottle up for a day when you need them. I might be wrong, but I feel like we all have those frozen in time images in our respective psyches. Certainly, I think our two guests on today's episode would agree. Drake Jensen is an independent country musician who lives in rural Quebec, north of Ottawa. Joe Grimshaw is a graphic artist who lives in Champlain, but he is not just a visual artist. He is an amateur songwriter, or was an amateur songwriter. That amateur status changed when Drake Jensen recorded a Christmas song Grimshaw wrote called Christmas in My Heart. The song has become something of a hit in Canada. We'll hear some of it in just a few minutes. But first, the story of how it came to be. Joe Grimshaw, Drake Jensen, so glad to meet both of you.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here.
It is nice to be here. Thanks very much for having us, Mitch.
Yeah, thrilled to talk with both of you. I want to start with a question for Joe Grimshaw, because you have been working with Drake Jensen here for the better part of a decade, I guess, about 7 or 8 years. But you've also worked with a really interesting variety of other musicians. How does a graphic designer in the little town of Champlain, New York, end up working not just with Drake Jensen, but also with Tiffany and Expose and others?
Well, there's a lot of luck involved, and that's basically what did it for me. I had a friend who I met through a music magazine called Goldmine, which is produced around the country, and his name was Sean Winstein, and he was a music journalist. So he would interview celebrities who would come. He lived in Pennsylvania, in Orwigsburg, Pennsylvania, which is like a little tiny town, almost like Champlain. But he got to know people of like Stacey Q, Tiffany, Expose, when they would come through town doing gigs. And he got to know them well. And he was also not only was he a journalist, but he was also a songwriter. So he would write songs, do demos, and he would use me to do the artwork. So one of the first things I did was a cover for an artist named Kim Esty, who was based in Toronto. When the artists that he worked with got to see what I did, saw the quality of the artwork I did, they would come back and use me again and again. So I was just, I'm proud and humbled that I was able to do such, work with such luminaries from a little town like Champlain. It was kind of unheard of, but it was just one of those things that just worked out.
Well, yeah, so let's bring Drake Jensen into this. And what connected you with Joe in the first place?
A mutual friend on a chat site. Of course, these days, so much happens online. And, I always tell independent musicians, and they always ask, how do I start? And I mean, networking is a huge thing. I always tell people what you're doing, because you never know who you're talking to. So I've been, talking to a friend of mine for years online. And it was Ron Weeks, I think, Joe, that connected us. And
Yes.
I think Ron knew Joe and knew me. Interestingly enough, my graphic designer had died a ways back, and I needed a new graphic designer. And Joe, we started talking, and we became like, I think we're really beyond business partners. I think we're really good friends now. And that's how it happened. So, I think it's really important that people are really put themselves out there and even use the online forum, for as bad as it can be sometimes, to network, and you'll get like great connections like we did.
Well, and of course, as an independent musician, you really have to be able to do everything. And so finding the right graphic designer is not something that you can just turn over to your record label.
No, and I mean, and I have a very distinct vision about how I like things to look. I mean, from the very beginning, I've been like professionally doing this for like 20 years, I think now. Over the course of the first 10 years were here and there because the funds were always tough to come by, and recording was very expensive back when I first started. A song would cost $1,200 back in 1995. So, so that's an immense amount of money. So, few and far between. But as technology got better and I recorded my first record, it became a lot easier. But I've always had a very distinct vision of how I should sound and how I should look. And I think, between Joe and I, when we work together, we always come up with something that's really palatable for me. And as an independent, that's the one thing, like you say, that you are the final kind of decision maker before the world gets to see it. So I think that's always been the great part of our relationship together, Joe, was the fact that we work together so well.
Yeah, I wanna talk with both of you in a minute about the Christmas song that brings us all together here, but I am interested in that kind of collaborative process and the importance of the design, because, I mean, I'm old enough, and I hazard a guess that both of you are old enough to remember the days of flipping through LPs or cassettes or later CDs in the record store. And, I mean, I know I would occasionally buy one just because I liked the cover art and having really no idea what it sounded like. How big a deal is graphic design today when we are now listening to so much of our music on Spotify or Apple or Bandcamp or whatever?
I think visual image is more important than ever because you're now with, people being able to make music in their basements or in their home studios. There's a lot more competition out there, and people are they're fighting to get your attention. So you have to do something that kind of hits people over the head.
Yeah.
And like as I try to do is I don't try to sensationalize what I do, but I do try to do the best I can with the image and make it as professional and as eye-catching as possible.
Yeah, and I think for me, I'm really happy that we had a great cover because Christmas in My Heart ended up next to Dolly Parton's Rockstar in Apple Music's release radar. So I was kind of happy when I seen, oh, look, we're next to Dolly. Thank God we have a great cover for this one. No, but it just goes to show you, right? So everybody's looking at Dolly. So not necessarily everybody's looking at us, but always in popular and even in country music, I find a lot of country musicians kind of a little boring, to be very honest. And, they're wearing T-shirts and ripped up jeans, and, you've paid $300 to go see these people, and the image is just not quite there. I've always kind of been very, very careful to craft a very interesting looking image. And that's, and I'm older, so I'm even more aware of it because there's so much ageism. And I think having that, like that graphic that makes you buy, if you have something that makes you buy a record before you really know the music, then you got something special. And hopefully to God that the music is just as good as the cover.
Well, and I will say, you have a way better beard than Dolly.
Well, Dolly doesn't give me much beard competition. But, and I'm quite glad, but Dolly's got much better hair and other body appendages than I have. So I got to give it to Dolly. It was really nice to land next to her in Apple Music. A lot of people went, wow, you guys are like next to Dolly. I'm like, yeah, I'm like thrilled.
Well, and you think about it, like when, talking about like when you would go through the LPs in the record store or whatever, the person that you would have been next to is whoever alphabetically came right after or before you. And now you're in a position where you really can end up next to Dolly because Apple decided it or Apple's algorithm decided it.
Yeah. I mean, let's face it, ABBA always had the advantage.
Yeah, absolutely.
This week, I don't know whether that or not, but this week we have the #1 independent country song in Canada with this song.
Spectacular news. Well, I mean, so
Yeah,
let's talk about the evolution of the song, because we've been talking about the cover art this whole time, and we haven't even talked about the song itself. Talk about how this evolved and how the collaboration, considering the two of you had only worked together when it came to graphics before. How did songwriting become part of the collaboration between the two of you?
Yeah, I've been songwriting for the better part of 30 years. Most of what I've done is just basically for my own benefit as a hobby. It wasn't until I met Drake that I realized, hey, maybe I could get one of these songs actually recorded. Maybe they could actually end up, like a finished song. About 3 years ago, Drake mentioned something about doing another Christmas album or doing a song, actually. I went to work and came up with a song probably about a week and a half later. And I showed it to Drake, and Drake seemed to really like it. But, that was the year of COVID. That was 2020. So everything kind of got pushed to the back burner, and we didn't really end up recording it until this year. I had mentioned to Drake like late summer, early fall. It's like, what do you think? Do you think we should put this out this year? And Drake was kind of like, yeah, let's go for it.
And then I took it, and I said to Joe, well, the way I am with songs is like if somebody's written most of it themselves, as a vocalist and an artist myself, there's always changes that are going to happen. Joe had written like basically 95% of what still is intact in that song. And I changed some lyrics to make a few things a little bit more relatable as far as the video went too, because we produced a video for it. And changed the melody a bit to suit my voice, because I just sing a certain way. So I changed a few things and, inevitably got a bit of a co-write on it because of that. But, today there's so many people involved in songs. I mean, if you look at one of Lady Antebellum's songs, I think it's called Champagne Nights, there was 13 writers on that song. The song had a life in the studio. It took almost 3.5 months to get it to its finality.
Drake did really great production, and vocal talents were amazing. And that just drove the song further than I thought it would. I mean, when you listen to the demo, I have the original demo, which basically is instrumental. And then hearing what Drake did, I mean, it just put it over the top as far as I'm concerned.
Talk about the vision for this video. The video is this kind of interesting hybrid of nostalgia and kind of sepia tone looks into the past and over the top, tongue in cheek, I reckon. Talk about the vision for this video and how it affects what you ended up doing with the song.
So my brother-in-law is a technology guy, and he said, I have footage from like 30 years ago. He said, and let's make a time capsule and let's show our family evolution. And the bass player, even in the bass player in the video, he's like 5 years old in some of those clips. And that's my nephew. And so it really is this really strong nostalgia. We had a family get together the night we released it on YouTube, and we all watched it together, and everybody was crying because there was just so much memory in the whole thing. And the song itself, the way the song is written and the way that Joe put so much into this. And I know like there's a lot of songwriters out there that work in Nashville and they all pack right. And, they're just turning out commercial stuff all the time. But when a song like this comes along, that's so special, right? That creates this, as soon as you listen to it from the very first couple of lines, it pulls you in and it makes you go back. It suddenly becomes transformative for you.
Looking out the window this December night, snow is softly falling from above. The memories of the seasons past flood through my mind, filling it with merriment and love. I remember Christmas time when I was young, stringing lights and wrapping gifts by hand. This year I'll ask Santa for a time machine, so I can go back there again. It's a time to spend together with the ones you cherish most throughout
And that's what's so special about this song. I think it's probably one of my favorite songs I've ever recorded. So to create like a really great visual for this, we said, well, let's make it a little campy with the family stuff and the modern stuff, and we're all doing our la la la's and our hands are in the air and we're having fun. But then there's this really nostalgic thing that, family is we're all aging, and we see our family through the years, and it was really special for us. And I think what's so special for everybody else is they put themselves in the same situation every time they listen to it. And the reaction I've had, I've performed it live quite a bit, and everybody's having the same reaction. People are crying when they're listening to this, and it's really touching. So I think that's another aspect of creating, something that's meaningful, is giving it a great visual that people can connect to.
I'm really struck by how many people identify with the meaning of the song. The song basically alludes to Christmas time, Christmas is past, and how magical it was when we were younger and your parents and your grandparents were still here. And, as we get older, we lose grandparents, we lose parents, we lose family members, and it makes it a little more special to remember those times, because it's times we'll never get back.
And again, that is the evolution of a really great song and a really great songwriter. Kudos to Joe, is being able to create a neutrality in your writing so that other people can connect to it. I think there's a lot of artists out there, and don't get me wrong, I love many artists, but some artists love to, just write about all their boyfriend breakups and things like this. And, it becomes like their thing. And everybody's waiting for them to break up with their next boyfriend so you can hear what their relationship was like and hopefully maybe be able to relate to it. But when you open up something and you make it so, like I said, neutral, so people can really, really dig into it emotionally, I think that's when you get something really, really special. And, as an independent artist, it's done really, really well. So it just goes to show you that when you can connect emotion, people are looking to connect because we are so disconnected these days. People are looking to connect to something emotionally. I think Joe captured something very special in this song.
In the hope that we will never be apart, love forever true. It's Christmas in my heart.
How do you weigh your life or your work as an LGBTQ plus country artist with just thinking of yourself as a country artist?
It's always been a struggle. I remember when I recorded the first record, we went to Nashville, and this is back in 2011 when things weren't as progressive as they are today. And for as much as we've progressed, we've regressed lately. So I use the term progression very loosely. I knew I had to be true to myself. I am a very honorable person. That's one thing about me. I may not always be right, but I always like to do the right thing. And I wanted to be representative to who I was and all the people that don't have the voice I have. And when I say the voice, I don't mean my physical voice. I mean the voice that I would be able to be as a public figure. And I made a choice back then to show the world who I was in my personal life and in my professional life. And it certainly changed the trajectory of how my career has unfolded. I'm not a commercial artist. I don't want to be a commercial artist. I don't want to sound like one, nor do I want to look like one. I think that there's enough of cookie cutter in the music industry, and I'm certainly unique. And interestingly enough, through my journey, I've been able to touch so many people and inspire so many people, especially not only, let's take the LGBTQ equation out of everything. I'm going on 54 years old, and I've got the #1 independent country song in Canada this week, which says a lot. So I don't take this stuff lightly. I think what's happened is in the beginning, I kind of went, oh God, what did I do? Because everything changed. A lot of radio stations stopped playing my music. Music Row magazine in Nashville wouldn't give me any more reviews after I came out. So I went from being the Discovery Award of the Month in Music Row magazine with my new record, To Disappearing Completely. But again, I wouldn't trade what I did, I don't think, because I've been able to create somewhat of a legacy for myself that will probably live on and inspire other people for generations to come.
It sounds like without the LGBTQ plus part of the equation, there is no equation.
No, well, that's the thing. There never has been, and I've never really formulated anything. It's always just been pure art.
Oh.
Like everything I've done has been, every song I've sang or has always been in the moment, about something about in the moment, and whether I've written it or somebody else has written it, I don't really care. A great song is a great song, but I've chosen things based on what I thought would touch people. I've created imagery, and Joe and I have created imagery and graphic design together that has really reached people.
So I guess I had one more question for you, and do you? It's a strange question because we're having
no such thing.
All right,
spit it out.
All right. So we're having this question. It's the 12th of December, and you've got the number one independent country song in Canada at the moment, and yet in 18 or 19 days, the market for Christmas songs kind of goes away.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? I recorded a couple of Christmas songs, and another one that was really kind of touching was a song called Live Every Day that was written by a gentleman by the name of Don Graham in Toronto. And he wrote it and he sent it to me. And interestingly enough, my husband is a professional Santa Claus. And so, yeah, he's been in Hallmark movies, and he is a mall Santa. So he's in one of the biggest malls here in Ottawa, on the Ottawa side. And he has taken the song and used the song title Live Every Day Like It Was Christmas Day. That is on all of his business media and things like that. Christmas songs live with us for a very long time. And even though in 19 days things might shut down, we need not forget that a 78-year-old woman who recorded a song when she was 13 years old called Rocking Around the Christmas Tree is living with us today at number one on the Billboard chart. I love Brenda Lee. And I'm so happy to see three women that are in their 70s at the top of the Billboard chart. We have three icons, Brenda Lee, Cher, and Dolly, all living in the top 10 in their 70s. You are never too old, and no Christmas song ever gets too old.
One thing that gives me hope is the fact that Christmas songs, a regular song of Drake's might make an impact and then fade off into relative obscurity. It might be considered an oldie after 5 or 6 years. Christmas songs kind of, get rediscovered year after year after year. And hopefully my hope is that as many people love and like what I've done on this, in this version, and what Drake has done, that more people every year will rediscover the song.
All jokes aside, I think Christmas songs are one of those things when they have meaning. And we're back to that emotional connection because we are so all disconnected emotionally these days, I think, because of online. There's this the nowhere zone where people aren't really connecting anymore. But when you write something that connects really well, like Joe did, and we've embellished it really well production wise, I think those things live for a very, very long time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Drake Jensen and Joe Grimshaw, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. It's been great getting to know you.
You too, Mitch. This has been really great, and hopefully we'll do this again.
And Merry Christmas.
Well, thank you, and Merry Christmas to you and yours.
Drake Jensen is an independent country musician originally from Cape Breton, Nova Scotia. He now lives in the Gatineau area north of Ottawa. His song, Christmas in My Heart, was written by Joe Grimshaw, a graphic designer who lives in Champlain, New York. You can find a link to the video of their song at ncpr.org/northwards. I'm Mitch Tyke. Northwards is taking a couple of weeks off to recharge over the holidays, but you can always get your fix by visiting the archives at ncpr.org/northwards. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you and to Ethan Shanty, who reminds us all of the folks who have worked hard to bring you this podcast throughout 2023.
Northwards is an NCPR podcast production. The show is written, edited, and produced by Mitch Tyke with digital production supervision by me, Ethan Shanty. Caitlin Kelly handles our social media, Bill Hanel is our digital director, and Doyle Dean is our production manager. Music is by the Wickmore Jazz Trio of Plattsburgh. To support this show and find more podcasts, visit ncpr.org. This is NCPR, North Country Public Radio.